So it's great to see everyone. My name's Emily Todd and I'm working for the Great Lincolnshire Nature Partnership on the local nature recovery strategy. So what we'll cover today is kind of background into the local nature recovery itself, strategy itself. So what the LNRS is, the environmental objectives, the different uses of the LNRS, the new revised timeline, how we're approaching prioritising in the LNRS and describing the strategy area. And then the engagement that we've done, the local habitat map, which is one of the aspects of the local nature recovery strategy. And then we'll go into kind of reviewing the priorities put forward. I did send out a list of the priorities and kind of example measures that have been put forward. So I don't know if everyone's had a chance to review that, but we'll kind of go through what's being put forward step by step in terms of the priorities. So I'm sure many of you are already aware of what the local nature recovery strategy is, but just to cover the bases. So it's a new system of spatial planning tool for nature recovery. There's 48 different local nature recovery strategies across England, and they've been introduced to create a coordinated and practical action plan for nature recovery. And this is in the hope to build the national nature recovery network. So hopefully these should all join up at borders and create this network across England. So we do have the national environmental objectives. So these were statutory targets set out in the Environment Act and further detailed in the Environmental Improvement Plan. And the main aim of this is to enhance environmental condition, as well as stop the decline in nature and species. So some of the key activities or the key and national environmental objectives that we're meant to be working towards in the local nature recovery strategy include biodiversity on land priorities or targets. So this is creating more than 500,000 hectares of wildlife rich habitat outside of protected sites. I'll minimise this as well. Halt the decline of species abundance by 2030 and reduce the risk of species extinction by 2042. It also involves increasing canopy cover or woodland cover and improving the water quality and availability. So these are some, as I said, some key targets set out, but there are also additional national environmental objectives that the LNRS can work towards, and this can be bringing people closer to nature and increasing the use of nature-friendly farming and things like this. So the LNRS's uses, it'll be used to help direct biodiversity net gain. So anything mapped in the local nature recovery strategy. So there's two aspects. There's a statement of biodiversity priorities, which describes the strategy area and outlines what priorities we'll be working towards and how to achieve those. And then there's the local habitat map, and this includes two parts. So it's one that has, the first part is our existing habitats or best sites for nature, and then it'll include the areas that could become important for biodiversity. So the areas that could become important for biodiversity are the strategic areas identified that will help to achieve the priorities mentioned in that statement, biodiversity priorities. So anything mapped can give a 15% uplift in the biodiversity metric. So it's going to be an important tool in terms of directing biodiversity net gain. Local planning authorities will use the LNRS in the future to inform local plans. As well, it'll help public authorities understand how they'll be able to meet their legal duty to conserve and enhance biodiversity. So there's been a strengthened duty now under the Environment Act and other acts for public authorities to not only conserve but enhance biodiversity. As well, it'll help provide information to farmers and land managers in terms of countryside stewardship and sustainable farming options, and that can help to help them during their application process. It'll further support other funding applications and decision making in terms of nature recovery. And it can also help local authorities and local partners target funding. So it'll be really useful for, like I say, directing that funding, helping to support applications and potentially identify opportunities for landscape recovery project proposals. So in terms of timeline, we've had a revised timeline. So Lincolnshire County Council had a project officer who has recently left the council. So we've revised the timeline and we're currently working towards this newly proposed timeline of publication in March 2026. So before public consultation, there needs to be two aspects. So there needs to be a pre-consultation with supporting authorities, so all local authorities in the area and DEFRA arm's length bodies, as well as public consultation and supporting authorities. So yourselves will be able to also approve the publication of this strategy. So in terms of where we are, we're currently agreeing our priorities and measures for the local nature recovery strategy, hoping to carry out mapping activities in April and then produce the final draft in May, by May at least. So we are working on that draft in the background. And then this should be able to, once the draft has been signed off through LCC's executives, then it can be sent to yourselves, so the supporting authorities, for pre-consultation, so agreement that we can move forward with consultation. The consultation itself will run through August to September 2025, and again aiming to publish in March 2026. So in terms of how we're going to write the strategy and present the strategy, we're taking a national character area approach. This is because Greater Lincolnshire itself is a diverse landscape from north to south and east to west. We need to address and identify the key pressures, including anticipated future pressures within the NCAs or across Greater Lincolnshire. And by doing this, we can identify opportunities for nature recovery to help create that description of the strategy area. We have previously run workshops to gather opinion on what these key pressures are within each NCA. So that work has fed into this area description. We carried out a series of engagement. So I know it was a while back now, but last year we asked for relevant existing plans and strategies. So across 28 organisations, we had 68 plans and strategies, and these included local plans, tree and hedgerow strategies, open space strategies, climate action plans, catchment management plans, river basin management plans, and biodiversity action plans. So this includes the Lincolnshire Biodiversity Action Plan and also internal drainage board biodiversity action plans. And this, out of these plans and strategies, we got 81 priorities / measures. So, and what I mean by priorities is the end result of what the strategy is seeking to achieve in terms of nature recovery. And the measures are the on-the-ground actions that will help deliver those priorities. So some of the examples of what came out of this was green infrastructure, river and floodplain restoration, creating wet and dry heath, wetland restoration and creation, natural flood management, and improving water quality. So in terms of the local habitat map, as I said, there's two aspects to this. We've got the APIB map, so this is areas of particular importance for biodiversity. This includes irreplaceable habitats, any designated sites, local wildlife sites, and also ancient and veteran trees. So I can share this map with yourselves as well at the end of the session if you'd like to have your eyes on it. And it is also on the LNRS website as well. So this APIB map is the basis of our ecological network. And basically it was quite prescriptive in what we had to include. And it's the best sites are those that have some form of protection within the planning system. So like local wildlife sites, although they're not fully protected, we still have to have regard to them. And this will be the basis of what we're building our ecological network around. So when we're coming to map the areas that could become important for biodiversity, we're hoping to develop those areas, not only around kind of strategic opportunities in terms of data, but also to try and connect these sites. We've carried out engagement with a number of different sectors. So we've got the supporting authorities, species recovery group, farmers and land managers, heritage sector and developers. We've had a series of one-to-one conversations as well, and ran 2 surveys. So this was the public survey and the farmers and land managers survey. Some of the key points coming out of these surveys were to make our existing habitats better in quality and condition, improve the connectivity between these habitats, and limit impacts of development. As well, some of the survey results, so in terms of habitat, species and ecosystem services that were supported, in black are the public survey top priorities are identified, or top habitat, species and ecosystem services identified that have public support. And in red, or anything with a red asterisk, it was also supported within the farmers survey. So the only difference in terms of habitats was that farmers suggested grassland was more of a priority than woodland, which was identified in the public survey. And similar thing with the species. So invertebrates was supported and deemed to be the most important in the farmers survey, including wildflowers and trees, whereas wildflower, trees, mammals and birds was identified in the public survey. And I think it's reflected in the ecosystem services. What I think it's quite clear what's the most important to these sectors. So in terms of the public, it was space for wildlife, health and mental well-being, clean air, flood protection, water quality. Farmers and land managers was soil condition and pollination. So I think that's all very appropriate and logical. So in terms of our recent workshop, and this is what we'll be covering today. So we ran a workshop on the 6th of March with environmental professionals, and on earlier this week with the species recovery group. And this is to go through the environmental professionals workshop on the 6th was to go through the priorities being proposed with consideration of whether they're addressing current and anticipated future pressures, what national environmental objectives they're achieving, the feasibility of achieving the priority, as well as putting forward any other suitable measures that might be able to achieve the priorities put forward. So whereas the species recovery group was looking at what species we should be including, particularly in terms of individual species as their own standalone priority, that is. So some of the outputs from or feedback that we were initially getting is to provide the clear definitions for each habitat mentioned, I think in terms of being user friendly, we need to keep this as accessible as possible. But we can provide additional detail and more technical detail in the appendices of the document. We need to further separate, so there's where priorities have been put forward as more connected and better managed. So these are the laws and principles we're going with. In terms of the more connected and better managed priorities, it's better to split the more connected priorities from the better managed, as well as teasing out some habitats. So where priorities have mentioned a collective, so woodland, wet woodland and wood pasture and parkland, it's to further separate those ones out. Some of the feedback in terms of the built environment was to include urban rivers due to their different needs in management compared to the other more naturalised rivers, include blue and green infrastructure and increased canopy cover. There was also a request to further emphasise limiting the impacts of different development types in terms of industrial, commercial and domestic, and this is a particular highlight for the Humber Estuary. As well, in terms of farming, it was to include different types of farming, and we can target these to different areas. So Ben's farming might look slightly different from the wider landscape.